evening and welcome to the 605th episode of Travel Itch Radio. I'm Dan Schlossberg. We are in the 14th season of Travel Itch, the show that lets you enjoy the pleasures of travel from the comfort of your armchair. Every week at this time, we talk to people representing destinations, hotels, airlines, railroads, car rental companies, and others in the world of travel and hospitality, from authors and bloggers to broadcasters and publicists. If it's got anything to do with travel, it's got everything to do with Travel Itch. Our guest today is Larry Horwitz, Executive Vice President of Historic Hotels of America. And if you listen to the show, you know I'm a fan. Welcome, Larry, to the new video Travel Itch.
Thanks, Dan. Glad to be here on episode 605.
Well, as you know, Larry, I'm a huge fan of history, too. Not only Fenway Park and Wrigley Field, but also Historic Hotels of America. I've stayed in more than 50 of them and enjoyed indulging in the glory days and sometimes even the Gilded Age. Just a month ago, I returned to the Palmer House in Chicago and loved its amenities and location. But please tell our viewers what standards hotels must meet to belong to Historic Hotels of America.
Sure. Historic Hotels of America is an official program of the National Trust for Historic Preservation. We look at four categories. Number one, the hotel has to be in a building that's at least 50 years old. Second, the hotel building it needs to be listed in the National Register of Historic Places or eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. Third, it needs to be architecturally significant. And fourth, we look for something of historic significance. Was something invented there? Was there a famous meeting there at some point? Were there owners there? Was it the first in something? And so we look at that combination of that criteria to decide whether or not the hotel is eligible to be inducted into the Historic Hotels of America program.
How many members do you have, and are more on the way?
We have more than 320 members in Historic Hotels of America. We also have a sister program called Historic Hotels Worldwide with about 340 hotels in 50 countries. And we're always looking at more every day. More our hotels become historic by the age. But the other thing that in the last 15 years, we've looked at hotels that were in buildings that were built originally for a different purpose and then converted to hotels. And so we induct those. And those hotels could have been in train stations or warehouses or banks or other buildings that today they're operating as hotels. I'm looking at pictures there's a minute there. The Hotel
Yes.
Del Coronado, a curio collection by Hilton Hotel in San Diego, one of my favorites. It was designated a National Historic Landmark several years ago. Just completed nearly $800 million, a 5-year restoration and renovation. It's an absolutely phenomenal hotel, and it's one of a kind with all the woodwork and the Victorian woodwork and inside. It's also famous for as being one of the haunted hotels for a guest that stayed there for only a week, but their spirit never left.
How does a hotel have to apply for membership, or can it be nominated?
Both. We have on our website, historichotels.org, a nominate a hotel button, and we receive nominations from guests, from travelers, from the media, from other historic hotels, and we vet those nominations. Otherwise, we also have owners, managers, historians, people that will apply for membership, and they'll name their hotel, and we have a staff of historians that will research the hotel, look at the hotel, and determine whether it's eligible for induction into Historic Hotels of America.
How does membership in Historic Hotels of America help properties that belong?
Well, we help to give the hotel three things. We authenticate their history. We let travelers know that this hotel has been recognized by the National Trust for Historic Preservation and Historic Hotels of America as one of the finest historic hotels across the United States. So we also communicate, and we publish content monthly to the media about different aspects of historic hotels, and then we maintain a website that we call under historichotels.org. For travelers that want, we also publish a monthly newsletter about information about historic hotels. It's called Discover and Explore. You can sign up for that newsletter on our website, historichotels.org.
How old is your oldest member, Larry? I know some of your member hotels date back to the Civil War and even the American Revolution.
That's true. And I was not there to cut the ribbon at the first ones. But the oldest hotel is the El Convento Hotel in San Juan, Puerto Rico. It started life as a convent and it became a hotel about 35 years ago. But the building was built 1651. So today it's almost 375 years old. We have several hotels that we say George Washington really did sleep there. They were built before the Revolution. One of the oldest is the Concord Colonial Inn. It was houses. It was where a number of literary greats used to meet. But it's also where some of the ammunition was stored by the Patriots for the when the redcoats were coming across the Lexington and the Concord, and that goes back to 1716. We have the Red Lion Inn, which was built as an inn, dates to 1773. The oldest resort is the Omni Homestead Resort. It dates back to the original homestead given to a captain that fought in the Revolutionary War. That dates to 1766. I'm sorry, he was got a land grant for his work he did in the French Indian War, and then later on went back and as an officer under General Washington.
I love the fact that Historic Hotels of America always has special promotions for various holidays, such as 25 most romantic hotels for Valentine's Day, the top 10 haunted hotels for Halloween. How are those selected?
Well, we try to publish once a month, and depending on the season of the year, hotels can nominate themselves, but we look at different themes that are unique for hotels. And so we may do in the spring, we publish the top 25 historic hotels of America, most magnificent gardens list. And many of these hotels have gardens that were planted more than 100 years ago or designed by the Olmsted brothers, for example. We publish a list once a year of the top 25 historic hotels of America, most historic golf courses. And these are some of the finest golf courses that were first created around the country. Valentine's Day in February, we always publish the top 25 historic hotels of America, most romantic hotels, or the most romantic hotels for a proposal. And that's a fun list. And I guess in the fall, you mentioned in October, we become experts in the spirits. We publish the top 25 historic hotels of America, most haunted hotels list. We don't verify and authenticate each spirit, but what we do is we rely on our hotels to tell the stories and submit them, and then our team of editors go through and select what we think are the best stories representative of historic hotels. Two of my favorite, around December, we published the top 25 historic hotels of America, most magnificent gingerbread displays, because a lot of our hotels, they have gingerbread creations and competitions that their chefs start working on 8 to 10 weeks before the holiday season. Another one we do that, and I won't do them all, is the top 25 historic hotels of America, most magnificent afternoon tea experiences. Even though we're famous for the Tea Party 250 years ago in Boston Harbor, the fine tea experience maybe was invented in England in certain Victorian hotels, but it was really perfected in some of the Grand Dame hotels in the United States that started the tradition of the fine afternoon tea.
That sounds great. Historic Hotels of America is a perfect example of what Cousin Brucey would call oldies but goodies. I have many personal favorites, but especially the Otis Saga in Cooperstown, Hotel Sophia in San Diego, the Inn at Perry Cabin, on Maryland's Eastern Shore, the Hotel Bethlehem in Pennsylvania, and especially the Hotel Hershey, since the whole town smells like chocolate. Do you have any personal favorites, or do you have to stay neutral as a representative of such a big enterprise?
I have a lot of favorites. I'm supposed to stay neutral, but of the ones you just, I'll mention a couple that I very good.
Okay.
The Moana Surf Rider Hotel in Waikiki, which turns 100 years old next year. It's the First Lady of Waikiki, is a stunning hotel. Its sister hotel, the Royal Hawaiian, which it turns 125 I'm sorry, 100 years old in 2027. Known as the Pink Palace of the Pacific is wonderful. As you come across the country, the Palace Hotel in San Francisco, where Green Goddess salad dressing was invented, it turns 150 years old this year. I love the Palmer House Hotel that you stayed in Chicago. Little known fact, the chocolate brownie was first created there in 1893 by the owner, Bertha Honore Palmer, for the 1893 World's Exposition. She wanted a confection to serve. As they go across country, one of my favorites in Boston is the Omni Parker House, which turns 170 years old this year. It's the longest continuously operating hotel in the United States, but it's also where the Parker House rolls were first created. It's where Boston cream pie, now the official state dessert of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, was invented. And so we have a number of favorites, but two of mine that I think there's a hotel called the Broadmoor in Colorado Springs. It was built in 1918 by a gentleman that made a lot of money in the gold rush up at Cripple Creek, Colorado, and decided to build the finest hotel and bring all his friends from the East out to Colorado to stay, and tremendous. So we have a number of hotels that are there. But the Hotel Hershey, you have to say that 2 stories there, built by Milton Hershey, all the profits for Hershey Company, and obviously the Hotel Hershey go to support the Milton Hershey schools. Milton Hershey didn't have any children. He left he and his wife left everything into a trust to support the Milton Hershey schools. And today, 4,000 people a year go through these schools, pay no tuition, and when they graduate, they even have their college paid for. But it's just a tremendous what they did. A small little fact there, Milton Hershey needed to come back. He was in Europe with his wife and needed to come back early. This was, and he had tickets to go on the Titanic, and he couldn't take that trip. So he came back 2 weeks early. He had to attend to business affairs and never got a refund for his ticket. But he kept the ticket and said, "I'm fortunate I decided to take another ship," or he would have been on the inaugural trip. But because of that, after the Titanic episode, what he did years later, he created the Milton Hershey schools. He built the Hotel Hershey. There were so many things that never would have happened. He really created the Hershey Bar Company. So you get luck and unluck create legacies that we have today. So Hotel Hershey is still one of my favorites for how it came about.
I'm glad you mentioned the Broadmoor, because when I was in the Army Reserve in Fort Carson, Colorado, Jack Benny was performing at the Broadmoor, and they sent me to interview him. I wrote out 3 spots for the radio station. The last one, he screwed up the call letters, which were KRSN. He said KSRN, and he went through with it, and he said, "Gee, I did that lousy, didn't I?" And it was so funny, we left it in. We used it just that way. It was almost like he did it deliberately. But it was great.
Maybe.
It's a very pleasant memory. I was a fan of his before I ever got there, so that was great. Larry, when you travel for business, do you always stay at one of your members, and do you find new properties to recommend for membership?
I do. I do travel a lot. I love staying in historic hotels. I like I could go into the same historic hotel each time, but each time I walk through, I see something unique and different. So I always tell people, look up when you walk into an historic hotel, because you see a level of craftsmanship and grandeur that you don't see today. You see, in this case, you're looking at the ceiling of the Palmer House, the Italian artisans that came over to paint and do the fresco work on the ceiling. This is something you would see in Europe, or you'd see in some of the finest buildings. This is literally a museum piece that's been preserved over the years. But each one has something unique and different. I also like the stories, and there's always a story, whether it's somebody who worked there, somebody who stayed there, somebody that maybe wrote a book there, somebody that composed music there. And it's, to me, that's always fascinating. So
Marilyn Monroe here, right? Hotel
Marilyn Monroe, Something Like It Hot, a great movie there. It also served during the World War II as it was taken over by the military for R&R. But fortunately, it's been preserved. It's on Coronado Island, obviously just in San Diego.
We're talking with Larry Horwitz about Historic Hotels of America. Larry, I love the pictures and details in your annual directory, which is organized by states. Prospective guests can always arrange to stay in a member of Historic Hotels of America, can't they? They can go cross country and find someone.
They can. We have them in, I think, 47 states, coast to coast. We continue to add them. We brought back our printed directory, which is available in most hotel rooms, along with Preservation Magazine, which is the official publication of the National Trust for Historic Preservation. We also have a digital version of the Historic Hotels of America directory that anyone can download onto their iPad or their device. And that has a lot of additional information, but certainly has short histories, but it has lots of links into our website for more information, more photography, and more videos. And then we also have throughout the directory some of our favorite top 25 Historic Hotels of America lists that we share.
Tell our viewers about the Civil War lectures at some of your properties.
Well, we have a number of hotels that were built prior to the Civil War and then were taken and used as hospitals during the Civil War. And many of the hotel historians will include a complimentary hotel history tour or a hotel lecture, and some will cover what the uses were and how these hotels were used pre-Civil War as well as after the Civil War.
Do you have any other history-related theme weekends?
Well, we have, in coming up, that we just published first time ever the top 25 historic hotels of America, bars, taverns, and speakeasies. And because a lot of historic hotels have quite a history, especially during Prohibition, of what they did underground and where you could go, and some of them have actually brought back what was the speakeasy that was there during Prohibition. The law that the Prohibition didn't make it illegal to drink. It made it illegal to purchase and sell alcohol. And so many of these hotels had strong collections of alcohol pre-Prohibition. Or they basically looked the other way if guests arrived with their own bottles.
Is it fair to say, Larry, that travelers can find Historic Hotels of America in the mountains, on the beaches, and in city centers? I know, sounds like Winston Churchill's famous quote.
Well, it is true, but we have some of the oldest historic hotels were built along stagecoach routes. And then I'll say when you take over 50 years, first of all, airports as we know it, airport hotels are a modern invention really of the last 60 years. But most of our hotels are still where you would either get there by stagecoach, by train, or by a ferry boat, or a steamer. And so naturally, you see a lot of historic hotels along the major rivers. You see a lot of historic hotels that were built within several blocks of the original train stations. We have some historic hotels that are actually converted train stations. The St. Louis Union Station, former, what used to be the largest. It was the more trains went through St. Louis. There's a famous Judy Garland movie from a long time ago, Meet Me in St. Louis. And the whole reason there was that was the big train hub for the country. And more trains per day went through, where that's now a wonderful hotel and a National Historic Landmark. In Nashville, we've taken the former Nashville Yards train station. It's converted into a hotel. We have hotels, and one of my favorite, the Queen Mary, which was at one time, it is the Queen Mary. It's the original Queen Mary that stopped sailing and now is in Long Beach in the harbor, and it's a permanent hotel in Long Beach, California.
It's one way to take a cruise without getting seasick.
That's one way, and you can experience really a level of service and the Art Deco service. And hats off to the city of Long Beach for having the vision to preserve that iconic hotel. The management company that operates a tremendous job, and as I say, they are great historians and what they're doing and what they preserved. It's on my recommended list if you're taking a trip through California. Certainly, you can spend a night on a cruise line and get an experience without getting seasick.
Since I'm a huge baseball fan, Larry, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I know many of your members are homes away from home for visiting teams. For example, the Hotel Pfister in Milwaukee, Bud Selig's favorite hotel.
No, that's correct. We have many historic hotels by famous parks. Obviously, Chicago. In Atlanta, they clearly Fenway Park, and you can go through the history of baseball, and certainly look at the hotels. There's a side of history though that we need to be aware of. I'm a great fan of Hank Robinson. Not Hank Aaron, and the Jackie Robinson, number 42. I was a fan of the Dodgers for years. I grew up there, but he couldn't stay in many of these hotels when he was traveling when he first got into the league. And so the story there is that, unfortunately, many hotels until literally about 40 to 60 years ago were still segregated. And so it's the story of the early baseball teams is some could stay in the hotels, others had to stay elsewhere. Today, that's changed. That's all different. I mean, I think they were on the head. But anyway, there's baseball and historic hotels go hand in hand.
So many cities such as Chicago have multiple members of historic hotels, with each property appealing to different demographics. Palmer House, for example, is the birthplace of the Brownie, as you mentioned, and the home of a lobby bar that they say is the best meeting place in the city and the best example of Gilded Age architecture, with chandeliers and gold ceilings greeting incoming guests, too. And we showed that picture, and there it is.
That's beautiful. That's correct. When that hotel was built, that was the first hotel with its own bathrooms. It was the first hotel with elevators.
Right.
It was the first hotel built with steel and cement. And that's because the Potter Palmer, when he built a wedding gift for his wife, the first Palmer house, he built it, opened it, and within a week, the Great Chicago Fire came through and devastated all of Chicago. And Potter Palmer, it's the first time he took a loan and decided he was going to build a grand hotel. And he built it across the street, but he built a spectacular hotel, but it had many firsts. And it opened as the first, they called it the first fireproof hotel.
In your opinion, what are your most unusual members? Like snowflakes, no two hotels are the same.
Well, that's true. Well, I have to. There's a number of them that have made major contributions. We have a hotel you mentioned, the historic Hotel Bethlehem in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and Bethlehem next to it is the Moravian, one of the Moravian villages, and that goes back almost 350 years. As I say, older than the country. And just designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Well, the key to the historic Hotel Bethlehem was a community hotel. Hotels over 100 years ago were built. The communities would raise money and they'd form their own stock corporations. But the president of U.S. Steel at the time, and the owner, a guy named Charles Schwab, not the Schwab today, but Charles Schwab, who had worked for Andrew Carnegie, decided they needed a hotel. And they invented something to help build the hotel, which kept the company going for the next 50 years, but it changed construction. They invented something called the I-beam. And they created it, invented it, patented it. And they said, if we build this, we could build our hotel taller than any other building in Bethlehem. And the I-beam became the reason that in Chicago, within the next 10 years, skyscrapers could be built. Because up to that time, you went through Chicago, the building height was 4 to 6 stories maximum. And they created this, and U.S. Steel created the idea of these I-beams, that became their major product that they had. But you go in today, Historic Hotels Bethlehem is still known as the first building with an I-beam, and it's a landmark from that standpoint alone. And it's something you don't see as a customer, but it's in the building. And so, as I said, there's a number of these buildings that have something that are first that needed them to be built.
People are already looking ahead to Halloween and Thanksgiving and the upcoming winter holidays. So let's talk haunted houses or haunted hotels. I know you have quite a few included in Historic Hotels of America.
We do, and we have hotels. You're looking at the 1886 Crescent Hotel. That's haunted because his hotel is on the site of what was a hospital, where people were. It was a psychiatric hospital, and the people were committed. Reputedly, a lot of people went to the hospital and never left. Years later, the developer came in to switch it to a hotel. It's a phenomenal hotel, but it's reputedly the most haunted hotel in the country because they think the spirits of some of the former guests that were there and the prior use are still there. We could go to Salem, Massachusetts, the Hawthorne Hotel that just turned 100 years old this year. And they think that, that's built on the site of where some of the famous Salem witch trials were held, in the 1600s and the late 17th century. That's when they were trying people and convicting them of being witches and burning them or hanging them. And so reputedly, first of all, the city of Salem celebrates Halloween for almost 6 weeks every year. They don't recreate the witch trials, but they believe that the reason the Hawthorne Hotel is haunted is that some of the souls from the people that were accused of being witches might still be coming out every All Hallows Eve.
How about most romantic hotels? You have a bunch of those too.
Many of them. I mean, they have many of them have stars of Hollywood love stories. I mean, one of my favorites in the Mission Inn Hotel and Spa in Riverside, California, is where Nancy Reagan and Ronald Reagan, were courted and actually spent their honeymoon. Patricia Nixon and Richard Nixon were married and had their celebration at the Mission Inn Hotel and Spa. There were many people from Hollywood would go there. clearly the legendary Ojai Valley in outside of California, outside of Los Angeles. It was where a lot of movie stars went for romantic getaways and famous things. But we like to say the most romantic place. Well, first of all, I'd say, let me back up. Every day is Valentine's Day at historic hotels of America. You can't help but feel when you go into an historic hotel and you walk through these fabulous gardens and you walk through these grandeur areas, that the memories. And so I think our hotels are famous for people that are courting, for people getting engaged, for people for getting married, for people celebrating having honeymoons, and of course celebrating their anniversaries. You're looking at the Grand Hotel Mackinac Island, one of the most romantic movies, Somewhere in Time. Christopher Reeves and Jane Seymour was filmed there. By the way, no cars on Mackinac Island. Your transportation is walking or going in horse-drawn carriages, horse-drawn buggies. So again, you're going back in the past. But as I said, it's certainly a movie worth seeing. And we have a lot of famous movies filmed where they use their historic hotels as the setting or the backdrop for these wonderful stories.
This is Dan Schlossberg, and this is Travel Itch. We're in our 14th season, live at 5 New York time every Thursday on LinkedIn, YouTube, WhatsApp, X, and Facebook, among others. Larry, one of the potential problems for your member hotels must be maintaining the historic look without worrying about the vagaries of time. We're talking the natural wear and tear that occurs in a place is at least 50 years old. I know the Palmer House has had several facelifts. How do your members manage to keep their original appearance?
I think part of it is the commitment of the owners and the commitment of the people they hire. We like to say these are great, great stewards of historic preservation, but are across the board, the owners of these historic hotels are passionate about keeping them restored and continually not just maintained but restored. And I do want to emphasize that the public areas and the exteriors are what they continually reinvest in to keep them restored, and the grounds, the golf courses, like that. But when you go up the elevator and you go into the guest rooms are very modern, from plumbing to Wi-Fi to technology to TVs. And I have to emphasize again, it's a little like going into a time machine. You can go into the Palmer House once you get on the elevator, and it's a modern elevator, and you go up to your floor. You go into your room, it's a more contemporary room, and you certainly they're not maintaining the room the way it looked when the hotel was first built 150 years ago.
So some of these hotels are probably, I would say 20th century outside and 21st century inside.
Or 18th or 19th century on the outside.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of work that goes into, and a lot of investment and continued reinvestment that goes into maintaining an historic hotel. The building needs steady reinvestment. And I've given it to them that, it would be so much easier to remove and replace. But even I look at the hotels that we have in the national parks, many are designated as National Historic Landmarks. My credit goes to the operating company, the management company. There's a company called Xanterra that operates many in Glacier National Park, Yellowstone National Park, the Grand Canyon, and they're committed to the historic restoration of the buildings and keeping the buildings and the way they were, but at the same time making sure there's modern technology in the guest rooms and the restaurants and some of the public areas.
Larry, do you find presidents, politicians, and larger-than-life personalities like athletes pick historic hotels of America because of their reputations for excellence? In other words, class acts love class acts.
I think, first of all, they select historic hotels because they truly are iconic and legendary. and it can appear or be in a setting that connects them with the past and the history of that community. There's many of these hotels have presidential suites, and they're real presidential suites because that's where real presidents have stayed. But the other thing is that there's memorable settings, there are memorable locations, and I think it's easier to remember the experience you've had at a one-of-a-kind hotel or resort that connects you with the past.
The Palmer House has ballrooms where many of Hollywood's elite performed. People like Judy Garland and Jack Benny, and the Otesaga houses baseball Hall of Famers and their families during induction weekend, which just passed. Do you find an endless stream of celebrities who want to stay at historic hotels of America?
Definitely. Whether they're doing it for personal reasons or they're doing it as a place. First of all, generally where our historic hotels are is more central to where they want to be. It's also they want an experience as well that they only find in a Grand Dame historic hotel that they wouldn't find necessarily in a more contemporary hotel. And I think I don't tell people all the time, we don't guarantee you're going to see a celebrity, but there's a high probability that you might run into a celebrity at an historic hotel.
Larry, what's the connection between preferred hotels and historic hotels of America?
Preferred Hotels and Resorts is a luxury brand for independent hotels. The owners of Preferred Hotels and Resorts own the company that operates Historic Hotels of America and Historic Hotels Worldwide on behalf of the National Trust for Historic Preservation. We're two programs owned by the National Trust for Historic Preservation that are operated by the parent company that's also the parent company of Preferred Hotels and Resorts. But I would emphasize that within Historic Hotels of America and Historic Hotels Worldwide, we have hotels representing more than 46 global chains, brands, and collections, from Raffles Hotels, Fairmont Hotels, Intercontinental Hotels, Marriott Hotels, Hilton Hotels, Hyatt Hotels, and others. So on our side, we're separate. We have some preferred hotels that are also in Historic Hotels of America and Historic Hotels Worldwide.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like to add?
Well, I'm going to say if you're celebrating a special occasion or you're looking for something that's unique and memorable, or you decided you want a tremendous family experience, go to historichotels.org and really look at your next travel and stay at an historic hotel. I mean, whether you're going to Colonial Williamsburg and you could stay in the historic Williamsburg Inn or the Lodge at Williamsburg, which is part of the autograph collection, staying in or coming to Washington, D.C., where you could stay at the Willard Intercontinental, the Mayflower, Washington, D.C., or the Omni Shoreham Hotel. The historic hotels get you closer to the real experience, but you have a chance also to tell people that if you're bringing children along, this is one history class they can sleep through, and you don't have. And the other thing is the experience is within the historic hotel, not just without. But the last thing I want to emphasize, staying in historic hotels is affordable. And you go home definitely with a guaranteed memorable experience.
Larry, when I look for a hotel, I look for a great location, a quiet room, a king bed, a room with a tub, and a place with a pool, if that's possible. Do most of your members meet those qualifications?
Most do, with one item. I'm going to say that rooms with tubs are slowly going away. Travelers' preferences have begun for a shower with multiple shower heads, then a tub. Some hotels still have tubs, but I think as we look at conveniences within guest bathrooms. The guest today would rather have a 50-inch TV screen, knowing they can stream every channel, every sporting event that they can have at home. They want to make sure they have the same technology they have at home and more. They want to be able to put in their code and watch whatever they continue watching, what they started watching at home. And that's probably a higher priority today than it is the tub. But I think that's something that's as you say that. I think the other thing that most historic hotels have, they've added on more experiences. So if you do want to take a history tour, or do you want to go into the bar and you want to get a history of mixology of what beverages were invented there. And today historic hotels, they serve some of the finest non-alcoholic beverages as well as alcoholic. And so it's a tremendous amount. But there are a lot of reasons. And then I mentioned, if you're in an historic resort, you're going to be walking around gardens and landscapes that they're not put in the way they were 100 years ago.
Our guest today has been Larry Horwitz, Executive Vice President of Historic Hotels of America. Great properties, as I mentioned at the outset. I've stayed in more than 50 of them, including just about all the ones you mentioned. So thank you, Larry, for visiting with us on Travel Itch.
My last item I'd like to, Dan, is that in January, we published the top 25 historic hotels of America in film, video, and entertainment.
Oh,
You'll
good.
find that more historic hotels have been the settings of famous films. And of course, today, famous videos, even with entertainers. But if you want to stay where a famous movie was filmed, Home Alone was filmed in the Plaza Hotel in New York City, and it was also filmed at the Chicago Hilton. You showed the Del Coronado, where Marilyn Monroe filmed a couple movies. You can just go to Hawaii at the Hawaiian Village, where Elvis Presley filmed Blue Hawaii. Part of Blue Hawaii. You can go over to the Royal Hawaiian and where the Shirley Temple was invented at the Mai Tai bar, as well as Banana Nut Bread. But there are many movies that were filmed North by Northwest. If we go back to early
movies, you can go to Minnesota and the number of the St. Paul Hotel and recognize that. So a lot of our hotels have been the backdrops or the silent character in many film classics.
That sounds great. Thank you for adding that. And now that the baseball pennant races are in full swing, this is the perfect time to share the excitement with my latest book, The New Baseball Bible, Notes, Nuggets, Lists, and Legends from Our National Pastime. Both a bathroom book and a coffee table book. It's an unorthodox illustrated history that is really everything you wanted to know about baseball, but were afraid to ask. That's The New Baseball Bible. Get it today on Amazon.com. That's it for this edition of Travel Itch Radio. This is your host and writer, Dan Schlossberg, saying thank you for your time this week. Until next time, we are off next week, but return in 2 weeks with Janet Weiss of the Illinois Holocaust Museum. Thanks for watching. Good evening and stay safe.
Bye.